After amassing tens of thousands of troops on its shared border with Ukraine, Russia appears to be pulling back at least some of their forces. The unconfirmed report comes from a Russian news agency citing Russian military sources. However, a sizable force of up to 100,000 troops remain near the border. The movement comes on the heels of Ukrainian President Zelensky expressing concerns about tensions with Russia on a video call with 20 U.S. senators and members of Congress. For more on this, we're joined by Daniel Treisman. He is a professor in the Department of Political Science at the University of California, Los Angeles. He's also a research fellow at Stanford University Center for Advanced Study in the Behavioral Sciences. Daniel, great to see you. What do we know about the Russian troops who have reportedly left their post near the Ukrainian border?
Well, it seems that about 10,000 troops have been withdrawn at this point. I wouldn't read too much into it. It's very easy to bring them back. I think this is a symbolic gesture. Putin is withdrawing troops to send a signal that he's open to negotiations. I think he's also softened his rhetoric in recent days. He's happy that there's going to be talks in January with the West over the security situation in Europe. And he's still keeping the vast majority of the troops near the border, and they can be reactivated at any time.
You're calling this a symbolic gesture. How real is a threat of a Russian invasion at this point? And is it clear how far is the U.S. willing to go in helping Ukraine defend itself?
Well, in theory, the threat is very real. I think everybody, including the military experts in Ukraine, recognize that the Russian troops could invade and cover the territory, occupy the territory very fast. The question is whether Putin is actually going to do this. And it seems at this point that that's unlikely, though the situation could change very rapidly. If there were a Russian invasion, the U.S. has made it very clear that there's not going to be any U.S. military response or direct military involvement, but there would be very tough economic sanctions and perhaps other measures, diplomatic sanctions, and other measures.
President Vladimir Putin recently blamed NATO for tensions in the region. Has the Kremlin offered any explanation for the troop withdrawal?
I haven't seen an explanation other than that, they talk about this in the context of talks starting up with the West. I think it's portrayed to the Russian public as a sign, as a response to the fact that the West has recognized Russia's legitimate concern about NATO's stance towards Russia, and as a response to the acceptance on the West's part that talks need to begin.
That being said, Russia's foreign minister said Moscow and the U.S. are set to hold security talks sometime next month. What can we expect from that? And what is Russia looking to get out of the discussions?
Well, I think the Russian side is realistic. They understand that the West is not about to make the kind of formal commitments that Russia has asked for, that Ukraine will never be a part of NATO. So it's going to be an awkward process of talking in which the Western side will try to, I suppose, come up with alternative ideas, but not give in on the things that Russia is demanding. And I think from the Russian side, the goal is to drive a wedge between different groups in the West, to try and encourage those in the West who will come out in favor of making some kind of concessions to Russia and suggest rethinking the whole NATO strategy and the whole European security architecture. So I think the ultimate goal, the ultimate realistic expectation is that Russia may be able to create more divisions in the West and exploit these.
As someone who studies the economic side of things, what measures has Russia undergone to sanction-proof its economy after it seized independent Ukrainian territory back in 2014?
Right. Well, so one threat to Russia, which has been mentioned repeatedly, is that the Russian banking system could be cut off from the SWIFT monetary transfer system. And Russia has created its own domestic, so far, monetary transfers mechanism called the SPFS. So it provides a limited alternative to the SWIFT banking system, so far within Russia, within a few other former Soviet countries. But in theory, it could be ramped up to deal with the situation if Russian banks were cut off. Of course, Russia has become the Russian economy has become more independent. There's been substitution into producing domestically various products which previously were imported. Russia's economy is certainly not doing well, but it's surviving, and Russia has accumulated very large amounts of currency reserves. So it's not an immediate macroeconomic danger from any Western sanctions.
A lot to keep watching. Daniel Treisman, thank you.
Thank you.